Listen up, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and agents. You're in the right place, unlocking the secrets to real estate investing and entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Titanium Vault, hosted by RJ Bates III. Here's RJ.
Hello and welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates. Today I'm sitting down with Marco Romero. Marco, how are you doing?
I am doing excellent. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us and taking the time to share your story. Why don't you take a second to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do in real estate investing?
Excellent. Well, I'm quite pleased to be here. Thank you again for having me. Again, my name is Marco Romero, and I'm in the real estate realm. My wife and I, we are real estate investors. We purchase cash flowing properties using private money. Right now we have a portfolio of 20 properties. We do that together. And additionally, the name of that company is Bella Buyers. But additionally, we have another company that strictly focuses on wholesaling, and that company is Hilco Homes. In Hilco Homes, we have a team. There's about 9 of us now. And we're always looking to wholesale deals every single month. We are focused in the Central Texas area, mainly San Antonio, but we do deals in other markets as well. So that's what we do.
Fantastic, man. So how did you get your start in real estate investing?
Well, it really, to be quite honest, it all started when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a pretty common story, I think, for a lot of people. But that book was very influential to me. I read it in high school. So when I read it in high school, it was just a clear paradigm shift in the way to not only think of money and finances, but even more so how to think of my future. And in that high school time frame, you know, a very common thought process and just belief is go to school, get good grades, go to college, get even better grades. You know, you're doing this so that you can then win a well-paying job, work at that job for 30 years until you retire. Right. And I was on that track. Unbeknownst to me, well, I mean, I did know that, but I didn't really give it critical thought that there were other opportunities and other routes to take. And so by reading that book, it kind of opened up my eyes of the possibility of not only being a real estate investor, but also being a businessman altogether. And from after reading that book, I really just decided that that was the route I wanted to go.
So you never went to college?
Well, I did go to college.
Okay.
So when I was in high school, I was like, I did extremely well. I performed well in that arena. Just my brain works that way. I could do well in tests and take a lecture in that kind of thing. And I got like a full ride to a college here, university near San Antonio. And so I was very pressured into doing that. So I did. But as time progressed, you know, these thoughts that initiated from that book just kind of were germinating and growing, and eventually I quit college. Even though I had enough, I was in college for I was doing really well in school. I was like 2.5 years in, but I was basically a senior, and but I still decided to quit, and to the disappointment of my parents, but I knew that I wanted a different direction for my life, so I decided to quit and try and figure this out.
So when you quit college, is that when you started Hilco Homes, or where did you go from there?
No, that would have been, I'd be way further if that were the case. No, there was a lot of learning. I knew when I quit college, the first thing I needed to, well, one of the concepts in the book that's not really talked about very much or highlighted in comparison to some of the other concepts, but was really important to me was that the fact that don't get a job for money, but you know, get a job based on the skill sets that you want to acquire. And I knew if I wanted to be a real estate investor and a businessman, fundamentally the number one thing that any business thrives on is being able to sell. And I naturally at my core, and especially then, was a very introverted person. I'm still introverted, even though I have a lot of people fooled now. My comfortable spot was just in front of the computer all day long, you know, just looking on the internet or spreadsheets or data or whatever, rather than talking to people person to person. So I knew that my number one thing I needed to work on was sales. So I got a sales job. Very first thing, I ended up working for a company called Cutco, where you sell knives.
Okay.
And so I basically talked to my friends and family in any context I could and set up appointments and sold them knives, quality knives, great knives. But it was a great learning experience on how to sell, how to set up a pitch, how to close people, and how to present yourself, that kind of thing. From there, I realized that I was very weak on the phone. Like, I was great if I was in front of people and I could talk to them, but on the phone, like selling over the phone or even setting up appointments over the phone, I was really weak on. So then I got a job at a company where I took catalog orders over the phone, and then we did a third-party sale at the end, and I did really well at that. But then I realized I basically didn't enjoy being on the phone, telemarketer style in a sense, for 8 hours all day every day. So
Right.
I transitioned from there into the service industry, restaurants. I ended up working at a pretty well-known restaurant here in San Antonio, Papado. I was a server, ended up becoming a bartender and a manager there. Well, all the while I was doing this, I basically was reading as many books as I could. I devoured all the Robert Kiyosaki's content and stuff that he was putting out. Additionally, I was going to a number of different seminars. I went to Trump seminars. I was going to all kinds of real estate seminars, anything I could go to.
Right.
And eventually I ended up going to a Lifestyles Unlimited seminar.
There you go.
And my mom actually knew at this point, years had gone by. And so at this point, she was more willing to kind of help me with my dreams. The wound of me quitting college had healed a little bit at this point. But I went to Lifestyles Unlimited, and I just saw that, wow, there was really great value there. And they were really teaching actual concepts rather than just like theories or setting up a sales pitch. And so I became a member over there. And from becoming a member there, I was like 22-ish at the time. I had nothing else to do. I quit my job at Papado and said, I'm going to become a full-time investor. And I got my membership there, and I just thought it would be like, I didn't know what it would be like, but I figured I could figure it out.
Right.
So I had all this time on my hands, and basically I was really annoying to the office. I was there all the time, sending them emails all the time. I was just very active, going to all their events. Eventually, so much so that they said, hey, you know what? Why don't you join our team and become an agent here in office where you find investment deals for our clients. And so I ended up joining them as an agent there at Lifestyles, and that's kind of where I got started in the real estate realm.
So I will say you're definitely not the first guest who has brought up Rich Dad Poor Dad.
It's fundamental.
Huge influence on their life, but I think you are the first person that said that led them to become a knife salesperson. I think you're the first one of that. So you joined Lifestyles Unlimited. You became an agent for them. Let's talk about that experience, and then how did that translate to you eventually starting your own business?
Okay, so me working at Lifestyles I thought was a grand opportunity because ultimately I wanted to become an investor, I wanted to become a businessman, and I wanted to do real estate investing. And so by being an agent, I knew I wasn't really financially capable to acquire my own properties, but by being an agent and finding deals for other investors, it was a huge experience to leverage. Mm-hmm. I got to see how other investors viewed the properties, how they dealt with fires or problems that came up. I learned how to negotiate. I learned how to draft contracts. I learned how to assess investment deals, how to ensure closing, how to look at it from a flip perspective, a rental perspective, even an owner finance exit. I learned a lot from that. So it was a huge leverage opportunity. Well, from there, I eventually decided to go out on my own, and I became a wholesaler, and I started wholesaling because at the time, as an agent, your income is really capped, not in the sense of volume. If I had done more volume, obviously you can make more sales, but you can only make so much on a particular deal, 3%. Right. And, if you're buying investment deals, the goal is to get it as low as possible. So that percentage, is obviously, also goes with that. So becoming a wholesaler really became an opportunity to increase my income and move me in the direction of putting money in the bank. Because I was young, I didn't have much money. Actually, and during this process, I failed to mention this. Before Lifestyles, I joined up with a guy that was supposed to kind of mentor me, and I paid the guy 10 grand to teach me, and then he ended up moving to a different market, a different city very shortly after that, like a little over a month after that. So I really didn't have much money.
Right.
So wholesaling was an opportunity to kind of bolster my bank account and kind of go out on my own and not necessarily have a camp and have more control over my future. Well, from wholesaling, I did a lot of deals, and I ended up selling a lot of my deals to a particular company that was based here in San Antonio, who was actually at the time the largest single-family investment buyer in the Central Texas region. They were closing more than 10 deals a month consistently, sometimes close to 20 deals a month. And I was selling a lot of deals to them. So much so that eventually, over a few months, they asked me to join their team and run their acquisition team. So I decided to do that, and I ran their acquisition team for almost 2 years. We had upwards of 9 people, and we closed over 125 deals in my last year there, and really helped bring in a lot of deals for them. But yeah, then after that, I ended up quitting. Now the story with that, I'll just quickly jump into it. Is
Yeah.
I met my wife during this process.
Okay.
And she was the perfect partner for me. She really, where my weaknesses are, she has those strengths, and she saw the vision for where I wanted to go, and she wanted to build it with me rather than deter me or go in a different direction. And it was definitely the epitome of teamwork. Well, while I was working at that company, we decided to get married. And when we got married, after that obviously leads to the honeymoon. We went to the Bahamas, and we had planned for her to quit her job, and I was just going to support us from my position there at that company. But while we were on the honeymoon, a little bit before that, we found out she was pregnant, so we had a baby on the way. So during the honeymoon, there was a lot of reflection. Hey, I just got married, we have a baby on the way. And, I was doing a lot of introspection and reflection. And actually, I was reading the 4-Hour Workweek at the time. And I just realized that if I wanted to build something for my family, I needed to build something that I had full kind of control over, and that I could control not only my income, but the direction we were going, rather than working at the position I was at. And so I decided to quit my job too. So we got married, we had a kid on the way, we both quit our jobs. And then January 2015 was our start date, and that's when we officially started acquiring our own investment properties through Bella Buyers, and then we officially started Hilco Homes, our wholesaling company. So that's everything
awesome,
in a nutshell.
That's awesome. So I love hearing that it was January 2015, because that's also when I created Titanium Investments and became a full-time real estate investor myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We were in the same brain wavelength, and didn't even know it.
And the funny thing about it is kind of similar parts of our story. I had become an entrepreneur back in 2012, 3 months before my son was born. So my first child was born in 2012, and that's when I created my first business. And
Wow.
then in 2015 is when I became a real estate investor, and we also started off with wholesaling. So similar paths there. So
That's
once
awesome.
you started your own business and you wanted to start acquiring rentals and wholesaling, for the people that are not currently in this business but are on the edge of, I want to get in this business, what advice would you give the Marco from January 2015? What would you tell him that changed compared to what you did?
Well, the January 2015 timeframe was kind of a unique scenario for me, because I made that decision when we were out in the Bahamas, right? And that was like right around November timeframe. We took the holidays and then we said, hey, we're going all for it in January.
Right.
Well, up until that Bahamas trip, like obviously there was a lot of history. I was involved in the real estate realm, like I had mentioned, not only doing deals as an agent but also wholesaling. So I had been around in the real estate investment community for quite some time. However, I had never really acquired my own investments. I had kind of partnered in a couple scenarios, but I never acquired any properties of my own. And what I realized was that a lot of it was due to the mental blocks that I had in place that I didn't even realize that were there. I would talk myself out of pursuing the actions to acquire my own investments. Like, hey, I wouldn't be able to get a loan, or I, might mess up in this arena, or which deal to go after. There was a lot of like mental hurdles that were there that I just kind of built up. Plus, there's that comfort zone of getting used to what you always were doing. Hey, I was good at being an agent for other investors. Hey, I was good at being a wholesaler, finding deals for other investors. But there's something about, and you mentioned it too, for you, starting a family where it was no longer just me. It was also my wife and I, but also we had a future child who ended up being our daughter. By really reflecting on that and taking into perspective of like, hey, it's not just me. I want to build something of impact for the future, and really taking some time to have that introspective conversation and the reflection to get realignment is really important. But if it was a brand new person going into an arena where you're surrounded by others that have done it, which is kind of what I did by going into lifestyles, just kind of catapulted me in my knowledge base and allowed me to learn and integrate and meet some awesome people. There were some investors that were my clients during my lifestyles agent days that eventually became my private lenders when we decided to acquire some rentals. Yep. So there was also just some wonderful networking opportunities. So surrounding yourself in those type of communities, trying to find a mentor or somebody that you can rely on, or at least be part of a group, a mastermind, a real estate association of some sort. Being integrated is what will really start giving you momentum and shorten the time frame to acquire deals, but also accomplish your goals.
It's amazing what happens when you tell people what it is you do, you put it out there on social media, you go to networking events, and you pick the phone up and you call people and you ask questions and you bring value to them. I mean, that's pretty much what I credit our success for, is that we've always done that. And just like you said, some of our clients ended up becoming private money lenders. They ended up becoming partners. We've JV'd on fix and flips, rental portfolios, and co-wholesale deals. It's amazing what happens in this business when you do things the right way and you just put yourself out there and open up those opportunities to work with other people.
Totally. And just to kind of expand upon that too, for me during that transition, officially 2015, a big part of it for me as well was changing the conversations that I was having. And what I mean by that is, like, if I were going to networking events or if I was talking to another investor previous to that 2015 decision, my conversations were always like, okay, hey, I found this investment deal. Let me try and, sell this deal to you if you're an investor as a wholesaler or as an agent or whatever. Those were always the conversations. Or how can I find you a deal? Those type of things. Well, with the realignment of what my goals were and what I was trying to accomplish, where I wanted to acquire my own deals, my conversations changed to, hey, would you ever consider partnering on a deal, or would you ever consider private lending on a deal, or if I found a deal with the right numbers, would you be interested in looking at it with me and bringing in the finances? So my conversations change. By changing my conversations, this is in alignment with the mental blocks I had. By changing my conversations, I produced different results, and ultimately the results that I wanted in the long term.
Right. It kind of goes back to that whole don't sell scared. It's the same thing as a wholesaler. When you go to a networking event, if all you're ever talking about is the next great deal that you have, or you're trying to sell that deal, it really kind of just falls on deaf ears because that's not necessarily what a cash buyer wants or a potential private money lender. You were more approaching them as, hey, maybe there's opportunities for us to do bigger and better things, and compared to just, hey, will you please buy this deal from me?
Totally.
And I see that all the time. I mean, it's funny. You'll see people start showing up at networking events and they're brand new, and they're either trying to sell their first deal or they're there to gather as much information. And then over the course of time, you'll see them evolve as a person and as a business person. And that's when you start seeing this success happen. They got to pay
Totally.
attention to the people that are at those events, and the next thing you know, they start acting like them, and then the next thing you know, they're posting on Facebook, hey, I just, bought my first rental, or I just flipped my first house, or I just sold my 10th wholesale deal. And it's like, yeah, it's amazing how that kind of correlates to
Totally.
itself.
Totally.
So let's dive more into your business specifically. I get asked all the time about, how do you find deals? What kind of marketing do you use? What's a good tip that you could give to someone that wants to become a wholesaler to go out and find these great deals that you're wholesaling?
Well, if you're brand new to wholesaling, you've never done it before, and you're trying to do your deals, what I always try and tell people is try and work with other wholesalers. When you're brand new to wholesaling, it's difficult in the sense that there's a huge learning curve. You got to figure out how to find the deal, how to negotiate the deal, the right numbers, get the contract, make sure you have the contract filled out. Then you got to go find the buyer, market the deal, have the investor that's going to buy it, make sure those numbers are right, get those documents right. Then you also have the title side and make sure, the airships are correct and everything else that can go on there. So there's a lot to learn, a lot to do. It doesn't mean you can't do it for sure. There's plenty of people that prove all day, every day that they can do deals. But if you're first starting out, cut that equation in half. So maybe you just want to focus on buying or finding a seller. Just focus on the seller side and finding properties and getting the properties at the right price point, and then communicate with a bunch of different wholesalers once you get that contract, and they can help you find a buyer. So that way you only have to focus on half of the equation. That frees up your time, and you can go look for the next deal. Or you can do it the opposite way, where maybe you have a few investor buyers, and then you go reach out to a few other wholesalers, and they might have deals in that area or close to those numbers. That's a great way to start. But a step beyond that, if you're doing it all yourself, what I try and tell people from a lead generation source is focus on one or two. Three's kind of pushing it, and try and become a master at that one or two lead generation sources. So if you decide that you want to do bandit signs, get good at putting out bandit signs and being consistent and making sure you're hitting strong numbers. If you can put out 100 a week, 100 bandit signs a week, if you keep that up consistently over a course of a few months, you will definitely be getting some deals. I think a big mistake that a lot of people make is, especially when they're first starting out, it's kind of that shiny rock syndrome, and they're like, all right, I'm going to do bandit signs for a week. Okay, now I'm going to try and handwrite some letters. Okay, now I'm going to do driving for dollars, and then after that I'm going to do some skip tracing. Okay, now I'm going to really focus on networking events. And they lose out on not only the consistency component, which to have any success you need consistency, but they also lose out on the mastery component as well, where they're not as proficient and they don't do as well, or they're not as effective because they spread out their expertise over the course of several different arenas.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just at a meetup earlier this week, and there was gentlemen doing. They've both been guests on the podcast, but one particularly, he's in Dallas. All he does is bandit signs. The other one, all he does is cold calling. Their business has similar results, but two different forms of marketing. But the deal about it is they've mastered both forms of marketing, and they're not going to try to one day flip-flop and say, okay, I'm not going to cold call anymore. I'm just going to do bandit signs, or vice versa. And that's what's, kind of created that success for their business.
Well, so, I think a lot of people, when they're first starting out, like a common question I get all the time is like, what lead generation do you go after, or what marketing do you do? And what they're really trying to ask with that question is, what's the best marketing?
Right.
what is the best one, the secret one, the secret to my problems? If I just do this, it'll be that. And the answer is all of them. They all work clearly. If you just
Right.
ask any investor, they all work. So it's not necessarily the lead generation, it's more of the execution. And so if you're like your examples of these two gentlemen, if you're the bandit sign person, the guy or gal that always puts out bandit signs, you will eventually get deals. But you have to be consistent in that, and you have to be proficient at staying on track. So that's what I
Right.
try and tell people: pick whatever you're going to pick, but stick with it and try and learn it in all capacity.
Another thing I want to go back and touch just to make sure that everybody understands when you were talking about JVing with another wholesaler. For example, if you go out and you acquire a property and you have a property under contract and you need a buyer, a cash buyer, and he's, Marco's saying go out and contact more experienced wholesalers that might have a buyer for that property. The one thing that you don't want to do is contact 5 wholesalers, send them the property, and kind of give all 5 of them the opportunity to market that property. Because what you're going to end up being is the guy whose property is all over the place at different price points, and it's going to kind of create a daisy chain of sorts with other wholesalers. So I always advise newer wholesalers, if you want to JV with somebody, pick someone experienced that you know can move the property, create a JV agreement with them, and give that wholesaler an opportunity to sell it compared to giving multiple wholesalers an opportunity to sell it. Wouldn't you agree with that, Marco?
Oh, totally. And by the way, just like quick FYI, that's a quick and easy way to get some mentorship as well.
Yes.
If you can get a contract or you have a really strong lead, believe me, if you are in contact with the right wholesaler that's experienced and trustworthy and ethical, they're going to guide you through the process because it's a win-win. If they can bring a buyer to you, then everybody can profit, and they're going to ensure the success of that deal, which then encapsulates your success, which is a great opportunity for you to learn how to do the documents, how to do the title, how to get to closing.
It's like a 2 to 3 week free mentorship like with an experienced wholesaler, because I do that all the time, and I become an open book with that person because you just brought me an opportunity for revenue in my business that otherwise I wouldn't have had. It's not, I didn't do any marketing to get this deal. You're bringing it to me for free. And so you're absolutely right. And then the other thing that you get out of it is you get all of that experienced wholesalers contacts. There's
Yep.
been numerous times where I'm like, okay, you're going to use this title company. Why am I going to use that title company? And then I give them the 5-minute spiel as to why that title company that I use is the best title company.
Yep.
Suddenly, that's now their title company. I mean, that's like invaluable to your business. So that's absolutely a great strategy when you're first getting started. And it's definitely something that I did in my business. It sounds like you did it as well.
I still do it. We still do it.
Right. Why wouldn't you? I
Exactly.
mean, you're doing half the work.
Yep.
Like you said, I mean, sure, you're only going to take half the profit most of the time. I mean, majority of the time, on a co-wholesale, it's 50-50 split. Um, you're doing half the work, so it should not. It almost allows you to stay laser focused on whatever you're good at in your business.
Yep.
Because you're right, wholesaling is hard. I mean, you have to find the property and then sell the property. There's a lot of nurturing that goes with acquisitions and dispositions. And so if you can really laser focus on one of those and find someone to help your business on the other side that maybe you're not so good at, it's kind of like you said, when you left college, you kind of focused on certain parts of your life that you didn't feel like you were good at, but you knew you needed to gain experience at, as far as sales and then as far as selling on the phone.
Yep.
You can do the same thing. Take those baby steps within your wholesaling business.
Totally. I
So
100% recommend that. I tell people that all the time, and even to this day, we still encourage it. We do deals with people all the time that are just getting started.
right. So let's talk about your rental properties. You said you own 20 of those, and you bought all of those with private money,
Yep.
which is awesome. So I kind of want to combine this question because I think you've kind of already answered this, but I think it's very important for people to understand what your why is. And I think the rental properties kind of builds into what your why is in your life. So let's talk about those kind of combined.
It's really simple. It's freedom and control of my life. Most people are shackled due to money. And as soon as you solve your money problem, then in a lot of ways, life kind of opens up. And I realized that when I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I realized that passive income was the only way to truly set myself free from a financial standpoint, which gives me more power over my life. You know, the reason people are stuck in jobs and have lives that they're not happy with is because of the necessity of money. You got to sustain yourself. And so for me, financial freedom has always been the goal. I want to be able to have control over our finances, but also our time. Time is a valuable resource. And I want to be able to experience life fully, completely with the family that we have and that is growing. And so that's why we do it. The number that I'm shooting towards for financial freedom is just under $13,000 a month, which is $155,000 a year passively. That's my main goal. I'm sure in life we'll shoot way past that, but that's the main goal that we're shooting for right now. And that would be a very, very comfortable life, and that's what we're working towards.
So you might have already answered this next question with how you just wrapped that one up, but where do you want to be in your career in the next 5 years?
We'll definitely accomplish that one for sure, sooner than 5. But ultimately where I want to be is I want to be wholesaling apartment complexes. We mainly focus on single family, and I want to own apartment complexes. That's kind of the main arena in which we want to go into. It's just a bigger numbers, so bigger paydays, and that's kind of where we're looking at. And then, from there, the opportunity to start other businesses are always intriguing to me, but it's kind of a one step at a time component.
There you go. Well, regarding your wanting to wholesale and also own apartment complexes, I will give a shout out to 2 former guests on the Titanium Vault, and that's Tim Bratz and Corey Peterson. Both of them have become friends and mentors to me in my path down, also wanting to do the same thing in multifamily and commercial. So if you haven't reached out to them, or if you haven't listened to their interviews here on the Titanium Vault, definitely check them out. Both of those guys are great guys in the multifamily realm.
Totally.
Marco, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today and share your story, man. I love hearing stories that kind of coincide with my own. That's awesome that we both got started at the same time in January 2015, and it looks like we're on similar paths and have similar goals. So it's great to have you sit down and share your story with us.
Well, it's definitely been my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time, and it does seem like we are in alignment, so that's really cool in itself. I'll have to definitely check out those past episodes.
Yeah.
But all the people listening, I appreciate you listening. You're more than welcome to reach out to me. But, if you're really if you're on the cusp of trying to accomplish your goals, that was one of the best decisions I ever made. You can accomplish it. You're fully capable. And I just want to give that last bit of advice, last push. If you can make it happen, you will make it happen. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'll wrap up this interview by saying Marco says that he's an introvert, but if you follow him on Facebook, he definitely does not come across as an introvert. He's always putting out great content on Facebook, interviews, and going to networking events and things along those lines. He goes on a lot of videos. So Marco, thank you for sharing that on your Facebook. Everybody go follow him on Facebook, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Titanium Vault with your host, RJ Bates III. For more info and to stay up to date, visit www.podcast.thetitaniumvault.com and on facebook.com/The Titanium Vault. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review, and we'll catch you next time on the Titanium Vault.